Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Yeah, it is afternoon. It's good evening almost at this point. Welcome back to CIE. Going to be your host for the panel today on building your own game. Today, I'm joined by Murray Smith, Steve Ingalls, and Remy Zhang. A great set of panelists here. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves just a little bit more? Murray, why don't we start us off with you? A little bit about yourselves and what your favorite game is.
Sure. So my name is Murray Smith. I'm an independent developer. I'm working on a 4X deck building game called Deck Terra. And my favorite game is Chrono Trigger for the Super Nintendo.
All right. And Remy, why don't we head off to you?
Hello, my name is Remy. I'm a generalist programmer at Ubisoft, and my favorite game is Tears of the Kingdom. So the second open world Legend of Zelda game. Really great.
Another great game there. Steve, certainly not or last, but certainly not least. What about you?
Hi, I'm Steve Engels. I'm a professor at U of T who teaches our video game design program. And for me, I have a weakness for Katamari Damacy. I just like rolling balls. That's all.
Well, that's always fun. Great games and a great start. As I said before, this is going to be our game creation or build your own game panel, where we talk with and about. Oh, I'm believe I just lost Steve your camera there, but it's all good. Uh, where we talk about game creation and how people started, where to go, and everything generally about it. So I want to start off with just kind of to get you all get to know all three of you just a little bit more. Just asking, how did you guys get inspired to get into game creation, or really, what inspired you to get into this scene? Why don't we start off with you, Ramy?
Yeah, I played a lot of like those online MMOs in the early like 2010s, late 2000s. I played Vantage, Club Penguin, all of that. So I like did that for kind of like a while, and then I stopped playing games because like I never really had any consoles or anything like that. So I kind of became super disconnected from what the gaming industry was like until university actually when my friend got me to start playing League of Legends. I was like, wow, this is what games are like now. That's crazy. Like I was like, everything is so juicy, it's so good, it's so like it had been like a 10-year gap in between when I last played a game at this point. So I was like, wow, this is like incredible. And then I joined the game design and development club at U of T in my second year, which Murray was also in and was a president of. And yeah, I was like, I want to try making my own game. So I met a lot of friends through that who I'm still in touch with like every day now. And yeah, made a lot of like hobbyist games. And then after graduation, I kind of decided I want to get into the industry a bit more seriously and put a lot of effort into breaking in. And here I am now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to see just how everyone gets in. And what about you? Uh, sorry, my what just happened? Sorry about that, Murray. What about you? How did you get into creating your own games?
Yeah, so there's a really great documentary called Indie Game the Movie, and I watched it at a very young and impressionable age. And I think that sort of it featured Edmund McMillan, Jonathan Blow, and Phil Fish, who were three kind of like indie developers around 2010 to 2012. And that movie like really inspired me and left a big impression on me when I was super young. Um, so then I just kind of wanted to make games. I was kind of certain about that for my teenage years, and then I started university and got involved, like Ramy said, with the game design and development club. And then in my fourth year of university, I took Steve's game design class, which was really formative and cool for me. Like I got to lead team working on a project which was a party game called Paw Pirates, and that was super fun. And that kind of sparked my, it reaffirmed my my thought that I wanted to make games and wanted to make them kind of independently and do my own projects. So yeah.
Same.
Yeah, that's really cool. And Steve, for you, I know you're a bit of more of a professor, less of a creator in the industry. But what is it about the video games that made you want to teach others about it, and help others with it?
So yeah, it's funny. I've been playing games for pretty much my whole life, from like really early, like Atari kind of systems. But I was teaching this one student in first year, and he was actually saying like, "Oh, the only reason I went into computer science was because I wanted to work on making video games, but we can't do it. There's no course on game design." And so I was like, you know what? I could help make a course on game design. And this was back in 2007. And back then, they were just starting to get some tools that allowed hobbyist programmers to make games, as opposed to what was available in like big engines that only large AAA developers could afford. And so we started using some of these tools, and we created this one course in 2007, and it was so popular that they decided that they're going to add it to the curriculum. And so that was pretty much it. Like I hadn't intended to become the video game guy, but because that course was more popular and it received so much more attention than any of my other courses, that's all that anyone ever gets to know about me, or that's all that anyone actually knows me for. So yeah, so now it's been almost 20 years of like just helping students who want to make games get a chance to do it as part of their curriculum.
Well, that's certainly a class that I might want to take in the future. It really exciting. Um, Seeing a lot of different perspectives from you guys. And one thing I want to ask is, what kind of excites you about this field? Um, Steve, I want to start off with you. What
Okay.
you may not be making the games yourselves, but is there
Mhm.
a and you did talk about why you got into it, but is there
Mhm.
anything that excites you about the field, or maybe seeing students excel in what they do, or seeing things that you've helped them make and feeling kind of proud in that? Is there anything
Mhm.
that excites you about the creation of the games?
So so it's interesting because where I come from, instead of being the one who makes like a single game, I'm kind of at a higher level, just helping get people access to some of the tools, letting people, like giving people an arena to be able to make some of these things. And
Hmm.
so it's nice to be able to give people that kind of vehicle to work on games they've always wanted to do and to express themselves. But beyond that, I end up using these things to go beyond just making games, for entertainment. And we actually work on things like using games as a new medium, like kind of like the way film and TV were new at some point. People are looking at games as a way, as a mode of self-expression, as a way to be able to educate people, as a way to express sort of artistic ideas and narration. So what I find really exciting now is the ability to explore this, like this new medium and all the different potential that it has, beyond just what we do for entertainment.
Yeah, certainly. Speaking of having the new medium, right now, Murray, I believe, if I did my research correctly, you're currently making the new game you're talking about, Terra Deck, correct? Or is it Deck Terra?
It's
Deck Terra.
Deck Terra, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I had that in my notes, but my dyslexia is showing a bit too much there. So, what excites you about making a new game like that? Going into the scene as an independent developer.
Yeah, well, I think, we're in a really fortunate period to be getting into this because games, there's all this like doom and gloom talk about the games industry, but overall, it's a relatively young medium, and there's still kind of a language being developed about what, like what games are. Like, there's no programs in universities yet where people are studying games but I think in the future that will be something that people might do. So it's like, we're kind of in an early period of the art form, and I think people are gonna where everyone's discovering the language of that art form as people make games. And so, um, I'm not doing something super artistic with my game, but I'm hoping that exploring new ideas like the one I'm trying to explore is helping to lay the foundation for what the next generation of games can be. And because the medium is so young, you making games right now, you have the ability to influence the future of what games look like in a really big way that you wouldn't have that much influence if you were like a musician or a filmmaker or something. So that's one of the things that excites me about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at the game. I don't want to turn this into a full sponsor read, but it's really cool seeing new or seeing ideas that I've seen in different things be moved into new ways to show them. And that's one thing I really personally love about video games is being able to experience things that I've experienced before just in new mediums. But for you, Raimi, what is your reason or excitement behind making games?
I think like one of the first things is something I realized also in the course that Steve teaches, CSC 404 at U of T. And it was also very similarly honestly life-changing for me because it helped me realize that this is what I actually want to do. And one of the reasons was because like throughout that course you get to work with like art students from other programs like Digital Futures at OCAD and like musicians from the music program at U of T. And so like, games is kind of uniquely cross-disciplinary, I think, compared to like literally anything else in the realm of things that you can make with programming and computer science. And that aspect, I think, makes games in general as an art form very interesting. And especially when you look at the indie space and solo developers, people kind of like lean into their strengths in different ways that make games really interesting. Like um you could just make a movie if you're just like really into movies like Hideo Kojima, or like you you could like lean super hard into your programmer brain and make a game with like super complicated farming, like schedule interlocking systems like Stardew Valley, or like you can work with a team of people who each really individually put their strengths into like the cross-disciplinary art form that is games. So I definitely think that's one of the main things that makes it so interesting to me. I also think like just in general, in terms of like anything that you could do with a programming skill, I think the problems that you get to solve day to day working on a game are super different from the programming problems you solve in like other areas, like web dev, for example. And like because I get to work on those sorts of problems like every day, I feel like it's a much more compelling and fun application of what I learned in university, compared to like other things I could be doing, which are also cool, but just for me, this is the coolest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always really interesting to hear how people kind of deal with different situations and different problems and how many different problems there can be. It seems weird talking about how interesting problems can be. But one big problem that I think a lot of people, including myself initially, kind of start out with when creating games is a big fear of coding. And there's so much choice and so many different problems that can come up with coding specifically. So I wanted to ask more generally, how do you guys choose what language to code? Is there a language you would recommend coding in? And what about game engines? The game engines can really help build people's knowledge out. Some make it easier to code, like very beginner ones like Scratch. And then there's more developed, bigger engines like Unreal or Unity. Is there something that you guys would recommend for people starting out trying to get into game development? Murray, why don't we start with you here?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people assume that the big intimidating part that a lot of people face when they start programming is that they assume that they have to build everything themselves, and a lot of times that's more ego than it is desire to build your own tools. Um, I think that I definitely recommend picking up a game engine like Unity, Unreal, or Godot. There's a lot of really good resources online on those things and how to learn them. And as much as kind of I have a problem with generative AI, it's also a really great learning tool. So if you want to learn how to program really, really quickly, it's an incredible tool for that. You can ask it all kinds of questions. Um, and I think it's useful for all kinds of things, but it's for learning in particular, it's really, really great. So um, it's easier than ever to get in and learn those things that are confusing about game development. So now's the time to do it. And yeah, pick a game engine and just go for it.
And Rami, I saw you nodding your head in agreement. Is there anything you wanted to add on to that? Any different opinions? Anything you'd recommend in specific?
Um, I think like for me, basically the most important thing if you want to get into making games, but you're scared of coding, is to get as fast as possible to a point where you're not copying what someone else is doing, whether that's like AI generated code or like a tutorial that you're following. Like the faster you can get to the point where like you write your own code, even if it's just like a for loop that prints out like a different statement after it waits for 3 seconds between each statement. Like when you do that for the first time, you literally feel like a god. Like the faster you get to that point in the process, the better. So like really breaking things down to like the easiest possible thing that you can think of and trying to code that, I think is like the best thing. Taking it easy on yourself and trying to get to that like satisfaction and validation as quickly as possible. I think like that's what makes coding start to feel less scary.
Yeah, getting through um oh, I had a term for it. I really like the term, but I'm losing it. It just slipped my tongue. Getting through just the immense amount of copying from tutorials really was a hard part for me. Um, so yeah, it's really nice knowing when you finally get through that and stop copying and start learning. Really, it really helps out. I believe Steve is just having some issues, tech issues in the back. But we are gonna just keep going. So I wanted to ask you guys, how did you guys start out with coding? What was your first language? And I mean, you were talking about how you should just start. Um, is that what you guys did, or what was your path into game creation? At least in the coding side.
I wish I just started when I was like younger. That's I think why
Real.
that advice is good is because I just like was very intimidated by it for years and years and years, and didn't really start making games until like midway through university in like a real way. Um, and yeah, and then after I started doing it, I was like, this is actually way easier than I thought. Even though it is a complicated thing and it takes skill to learn, it's never as complicated as you're making it out to be when you're kind of putting it off. My first programming language was I used Unity when I was younger to just kind of mess around, but I played around with Scratch too when I was really young, and that was great for kind of learning how to make really simple games. But Unity and C Sharp, and then I learned Python in university, and once I learned Python, C Sharp made a lot more sense. For me, going to university really helped learning how to like helped me learn how to code because it gave me like the discipline and the structure to do it. But I think if you have that without a class, then power to you.
Yeah. I think it was definitely actually, no, it wasn't even Python in university. I think like I don't even know if this counts as a programming language. Like HTML and CSS. I was like making my own Tumblr themes when I was like 13 or something. And then after that, yeah, Python was definitely my first language in university. And then at the game dev club, everyone was using Unity, so it was just like buggy see monkey do. Let me just do the same thing. Yeah, and then kind of after that, throughout university, you learn a bunch of different languages. In CS, like Java, C++, C even. And right now for my job, I use C++ every day. It is my favorite language now. But like ultimately, at the end of the day, like every language is more or less the same after you learn the foundationals. Um, it's really just syntax. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's nice to know that there's certainly a way through it, and that just kind of choosing one, and eventually you might find a favorite, like how you did. Or you might learn more about some languages over another by learning different languages. It's really cool that there's kind of a means to everything. But one another thing I want to talk about in video game creation is kind of the other aspects. I personally, at least, see kind of the three big parts of a video game being the coding, the art style, and then the music, kind of enhancing everything together. A lot of people have a big fear about uh, maybe doing one or the other. They could be a music student who isn't the best at coding or art. They could be an art student who doesn't know how to code too well. Is there any recommendations for getting to kind of around these three subjects? I believe you're talking about how in the class you were connecting with others. Is that something you'd recommend? Is do you would you recommend trying to do it all solo? How would you guys do it? Rami, why don't we start with you there?
Sure. I would say find yourself a friend who can do those things. So that's one option. I think the other option is like if you want to and are interested in making a game solo is just to go it yourself because I think like I think the coolest games come out of like a certain skill limitation that the dev had. I was recently playing like Return of the Obra Dinn recently,
Mhm.
and that's made by a solo dev, and um, it's basically like rendered in this black and white format, like very pixelated, but it's like in 3D. So, you know, because this developer is so competent with programming, they were able to kind of create this really cool style without necessarily needing to be the best 3D sculptor in the world and like create these like beautiful intricately detailed environments. Like they were still able to create something that really stands out and is super unique because they didn't know how to do that and to like find a way to work around it using other techniques, using shaders. So I actually think you can use that to your advantage to make something really interesting.
Yeah, totally. And you know, on the flip side, if you're a really great artist, then you can make a game in Game Maker or in RenPy, which is like a visual novel tool, and that is just as real of a game as someone who's making it from scratch in C++. Even though, like, don't get intimidated by your lack of skills. Like Rami said, play to your strengths. Um, if you look at the code of Undertale, it is a complete mess and it's terrible. Like that guy who made that game, I forget his name. He's not a great programmer, but he's a really great storyteller and he's a great musician. And so he just made a game that had really awesome music and a cool story and did whatever he had to do in Game Maker to get that to work. Um, so don't be intimidated. Just play to your strengths.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. And I believe Steve is back with us here.
Sorry about that.
So it's all good. The camera, I believe, we're still, yeah, it's still frozen there, but that's all good. Um, so I wanted to, oh,
Unites, programmers and artists and music. We had basically individual programs that were just doing things in isolation, and it was really rough because we had what was the programmer art at the time was kind of difficult to look at.
mhm.
So when we paired up, it kind of allowed everyone to kind of work together, play to their strengths, and then build. Um, but with that in mind, more recently we found that there's a lot more people now who can also do more than just one thing, and are really getting into the idea of not just feeling like I'm just a programmer or just an artist. And so it's been I kind of nice to see some people decide, you know what, we're going to do our strengths and like pull together people with different skills. and some who have taken it upon themselves to try to like unite all those skills and like bring them all together so they can just do a little bit of everything. So we just try to find ways to encourage that and figure out what kind of games can you make with the kinds of skills that you've got. Use the limitations as inspiration, I say, I guess.
Yeah, that's certainly really cool to see and to hear about, bringing people together. And it's cool to hear that you're able to kind of, like as you were saying, Rami, work alone and build off of the struggles that you have. It's really cool to know that, I mean, without have being perfect at everything, you can use your disadvantages to your advantage, as weird of a sentence that is. Um, yeah, it's really, really nice to know that. And I mean, just for me, I personally had a lot of troubles with the art of video game creation, but it's really cool to know that I'm certainly not alone in that. But the next question I have for you guys is, what has your biggest challenge been, or what is the biggest challenge you've seen for others in video game creation? Um, yeah, Rami, why don't we start off with you here?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question? It cut out
So
for me a bit.
Oh, so sorry about that. So what would you guys consider the biggest challenge of game creation to be? Could be for you, for others that you've seen. Could be the something specific. Could be more general. What would you say the biggest challenge is?
Um, Honestly, games are really hard to make, just like in general. And I think that's something like that really became reinforced to me after I saw what it was like to be in AAA at Ubisoft. Seeing like behind the scenes of like, when you play any game, every single like aspect that you're interacting with was handcrafted by a person, right? And like, so in the case of like a lot of AAA games, like we're kind of talking about these like crazy world simulations and stuff like that, and super intricate gameplay systems and like different pieces of state you need to manage like everywhere. It's really hard. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of labor and time. And I think that's honestly just the thing that you have to accept, like, to make a game, it does take a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of, putting your heads together and just slugging it out, to really sure, like, everything is really intentional, and actually is meaningful to the player. And just be willing to accept that reality if you want to make games, right? It's not going to be easy. Is I guess is what I'm trying to say, just in general.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think the it gets more difficult to finish projects when they're closer to being done.
Mhm.
So the easy part, I actually don't want to. I wouldn't say that to a new developer, but that the easy part is at the start. But it kind of is. Like when you're coming up with a new idea and it's exciting and you're making prototypes and stuff, it's kind of the fun part. Polishing, debugging, performance improvements, UI, accessibility, localization, all that stuff at the end is kind of boring. And pushing through that to ship the game is the most challenging part in my view. But it gets easier with every cycle, I find. I've only done it once now for a game that I actually consider shipped. But I'm finding it easier now to persevere at the end with this current project because I've done it before. So the nice part about it is just no matter what you do while you're making games, you're getting better at it all the time in ways that you can't even realize.
Yeah, I would second that. That usually what we say is that, getting your game to a point where it's like more or less complete takes about 90% of your time, and then getting it to the point where it's actually complete takes another 90%. Um, And whenever we have people, because we, for our class, try to get people from the industry to come in and give feedback to our teams when they're developing their games in our course. And the feedback they always give every time is scope. That, in order to make sure you can actually finish your game, you need to have a scope that is small or manageable. That it's really easy to have things feel or get too ambitious or to let feature creep come out. And so having a having an objective in mind where you actually want to complete your game means, starting off with something that seems almost ludicrously easy so that when you actually get down to it, you can actually bring it to a close. Um, yeah, like industry people keep saying that there's so many people that they see who have started to make a game, but almost nobody finishes it, and the ones who do are the ones who are the most impressive.
Yeah, they certainly can be. And I do kind of want to lean into that just a bit. How you guys are talking about how the last stretch of the game can often feel so long and very hard to get through. As someone with many unfinished projects sitting under me and sitting on top of me, actually, on my shoulders, just always needing to be finished up, what is your guys' suggestions to get through it, to push forward and finish up? Is it just to stay consistent? Is there a method you prefer to do it yourself, or what is the your way or your suggestion of getting through it? Steve, why don't we head right back to you?
Not going to say too much about this because I think you got the other two who have some very practical, like firsthand experiences. All I know for us is that what we try to advise is like just putting together the list, like what are all the things that need to get done, and just like forcing yourself to say like, okay, you're going to tick off one of these things from the list every day. Just because, as Murray said, it's not necessarily exciting work, but it needs to get done, right? Like washing the dishes or doing the laundry. You know, people do it. Like you need to just like realize, the path from where you are to having it be shipped. Half of the journey is taking that first step and then just, like using that to get yourself through to the end. But yeah, I'm going to leave it to like Murray and Remy to actually talk about what their personal experiences are like, as opposed to my general, idealistic advice.
I would say like, in other disciplines, we differentiate between composers and producers, or filmmakers, cinematographers, and editors, right? Like we say those are two different things for other artistic pursuits. But for games, there's no differentiation between someone who finishes a game and someone who starts the game and comes up with the idea. Maybe there's game designer and QA, I don't know. But thinking about those two as different jobs that you have to do both of. So you have to come up with a cool, interesting idea and prototype it. And then you also have to be the editor or the producer or the mixer, which is the person who polishes it and gets it ready to be released. And that conceptualizing that in a way where you're like excited to do it, like you're finding joy in that process rather than just like the process of like coming up with new ideas. For me, coming up with new ideas is a way to put off doing the difficult work that I have to do. So if you find yourself just like ideating all the time, being like, "What if there was a game that was like this and it was so awesome? It was like Skyrim with Pokemon or whatever." Like if you're constantly doing that, it could be like a subconscious procrastination, uh, where you're kind of allergic to actually like sticking with the project that you started doing, because it's so that idea is exciting for two reasons. It's that maybe it would be fun to make, and that if you started making it now, you wouldn't have to finish what you're currently working on. So yeah, my two things are try not to like get caught in those procrastination cycles and try to find joy in the detail work that comes at the end of a game project. It's its own thing.
Hmm.
It's a different job.
Yeah, I guess I think this problem looks pretty different depending on like what stage of life you're in. Like if you're a student working on a personal project, or like if you're working on like a commercial indie project like Murray is. But in terms of my experience when we were working on like these student projects, especially the CSC 404 one, one of the biggest things I think is to commit yourself ahead of time to like a deadline where you have to show a finished product of some sort, and commit that way ahead of time, like before like anything's even done, so that you kind of have this forcing function for you to actually have like a complete product at that time. Especially for students because like you have so much going on and it's like it ends up being hard to prioritize like a project like this sometimes, even if you really do want to finish it. I think the other thing is like having a really good definition of what done actually looks like. I think part of the reason why the polishing stage can be so hard is because you can kind of polish something like endlessly, really, if you wanted to. Like there's always something that could be tweaked and tuned to be better. So like before you get into that rabbit hole, you kind of have to be very clear with yourself or your team on like, okay, this is like exactly like everything we need to consider this game done. Once we hit that, do not keep working. Just like stop.
Hmm.
And that's pretty key as well, I think. And having to like be okay with that and not be like, oh my god, but it could be so much better in this way. But it's like you're never gonna finish if you keep doing that. So yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah, there certainly is. The as Steve, I believe, was talking about the feature creep of just always wanting to add more and more and more and more. It's similar to perfectionism, where you're always just trying to get it one step better. And I mean, Murray, you were talking about it as well. How, or sorry, Rami was talking about how the you can always keep polishing it more and more. And do you guys have any specific tips on how you've gotten through that, or if you didn't ever feel it that you were talking about how setting a certain deadline. Is there anything else that you guys do or would recommend to others to kind of get through that of getting through? Hey, I need this. This needs to be done. Just finish it and be happy with it.
Mhm.
Um, oh, sorry. You can go ahead, Steve.
Well, I mean, it just makes me laugh because it's something that happens in industry all the time, and people like it's not like it's a problem that's ever solved. They always get to the point where it's like, well, we've committed to a deadline because we're going to release it for the holidays, or because we've got a media tie-in and it needs to go out when the movie goes out. And the feeling is that games are never like they're never completed. They're just released,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, so just the idea that you have to say, well, look, it's going to be done. Like this is the date it's going to be done. So whatever is in here is the game. Whatever all those features that we had in mind were, they're not going to be in. They're going to be in the sequel. But but for now, like the game is defined based on what you were able to accomplish by this date, and it's tragic to lose some stuff on the editing floor, but you just you accept that what you've got is the best parts of the game that you could get in before your deadline came up, and anything that didn't make it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Um, no, I have nothing of value to add to
Oh,
that.
okay.
I think that's so true. Literally, like there's 50 cool things that are prototyped and come up with all the time in our project at work, and like literally 10 of those things make it into the milestone. That's it's just how it is. Like people are in games because they're brimming with cool ideas of like what they want to see like happen in that game and in the world. And you just don't have enough time to do all of it. It's yeah, it's just how it is.
Yeah, I think also like a lot of younger developers on purpose come up with giant ideas, like Steve was saying, like there's the scope thing, but that is a really insidious like thing that you're doing because you're kind of subconsciously coming up with ideas that you know you could never finish. And I used to do that all the time. Like I'd come up with huge ideas for games and then be intimidated by the idea I'd come up with and write a big document. And it was then so big that I was like, there's no point in even starting on this because it'll take me 5 years. So I don't have to start. So whatever. And that should be avoided at all costs. Like, uh, scope creep is real, but also like it's a function of wanting to procrastinate getting started in a lot of younger developers. Like that's what I would tell myself 2 years ago, who was starting to do all this stuff, was um, really rein it in. I'm dealing with scope creep right now. I've just spent a couple months just adding features to my game, and I'm now like wrapping it all up and putting a big bow on it, and it's like, um, yikes, you know. So yeah, everyone does it, but think of the reasons why you add a ton of features to your game idea, and think about what that means for having to actually start on the game. Why you might be scope creeping subconsciously.
I guess you got to tell yourself you need to save some stuff for Dectera too.
Yeah.
You can't give them everything right at the
Yeah,
beginning.
gotta
You know?
keep
DLC.
the army of fans I have at bay,
Yep. You got
waiting
to
for
leave.
more.
Yeah, you got to leave them wanting more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually leads me right into something I wanted to ask you guys. So I mean, you've done this for a long time. I mean, you guys are very experienced in the field. What is something you would tell yourself or want to tell yourself, or maybe not yourself, maybe the future generation? What's one big thing that, like you were saying, Murray, scope creep is very scary. Try not to get into it. What's one thing that you would tell the future generation or your past self uh, to heavily avoid, or any advice that you tell them?
Hmm. I mean, I guess if they're going to talk about sort of advice for themselves as developers, but I would say if I had to go back to my past teaching self, I would say I need to be much more brutally honest with my students when I'm trying to tell them to cut something out of their game, because it can be hard to tell somebody, because these things, it's like they're babies and it's hard to tell somebody that a baby is ugly. But you need to, like, sometimes it's like if someone keeps something in their game for like that's not working, then that means they're building off of something broken, and the fix is going to be much more painful later when the time comes. And so I have learned over the years that when something is broken in someone's game, to tell them in no uncertain terms, you need to get rid of this, because it's not doing them any favors to try to consider their feelings over the quality of the game, right? And it's not about trying to hurt people or tell them that they're bad. It's people take these things sometimes a little personally, and we have to tell them, look, it's not about you, it's about your game. Like, we all want your game to be good. So this means that, unfortunately, I know you worked for like 10 hours on this feature, but it's got to go because it's bringing your game down. Right. And I've learned a lot better now how to deliver that message, which was, because it makes the game and the whole experience better to not get people weighed down by like broken features. Yep.
Yeah, certainly for myself, that's it's I've had that realization before, where something I've worked so hard on, just I had to cut it and wasn't able to do much with it.
Mhm.
It's one piece of advice I certainly would have accepted earlier. But what about you,
Mhm.
Remy? Any advice you'd give to your previous self, or the future generation coming in to game creation?
Mm, I don't. I think just like chasing after making a game that you personally think is the coolest thing ever, and like that you personally want to make. Um, I feel like if you go into game dev, I think there's like a lot of things that can be like really distracting. Like I think, for example, especially if you come from like a CS background or like a CS undergrad program, it's like super easy to get lost in the sauce about like the technicalities of game programming, and then forget about the fact that actually none of that matters. What matters the most is like how the player feels while playing your game. So like I think there's a lot of noise out there on like people being very opinionated on like different architectures to use and like this is a best practice and this is not a good practice. And if you use this in your game, you're a dumb idiot who doesn't know what they're doing and blah, blah, blah. Like, I think really at the end of the day, just like keeping like the North Star of like, I really, really want to make this kind of game uh, and to chase that, I think is like the most important thing for, yeah, especially because like people are learning a lot of different skill sets at the same time if they're trying to make a game, especially by themselves. So trying not to get lost in the noise and stay focused on what you want to build is the most important thing. Because you're not making like financial software, you're making a game, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I echo all that. That is exactly it. Like having an idea of what you're trying to do and kind of tuning out all the noise. Um, for me, if I could give advice to myself, it would be get off social media because there's all this like uh, distraction on there that will take away from your time, which you will need to make a game. And so, it's really tempting to be like watching YouTube video essays about how they made X game or watching tutorials and stuff and thinking that you're being productive, but it's actually just kind of sapping your time and your life energy. Um, so that's for me really important. But if some people can do it in a healthy way. Um, yeah, and yeah, just like believe in what you're doing. It's gonna be hard, and you're gonna make some sacrifices, like whether that's your time or whether that's if you're in computer science, the amount that you get paid, or all kinds of different things. But if you really believe in it, then it's so worth it. So, and that's just for me being a year and a half out of graduation, working on this stuff. So I think I'll feel even more that way in the future. So yeah, just keep.
Yeah, that is certainly all great advice that I would have loved when I started, and I'm sure a lot of people who are just kind of looking to get in it, into the scene, but just didn't know how or are in it already and just kind of overwhelmed, because it can be very overwhelming. But unfortunately, this is going to be just about the end of the panel today. Before we end, I do want to give a shout out to some of our sponsors today. BMO is one of our big sponsors. And to help you focus on what's important, BMO has checkings and savings accounts, credit cards, and borrowing options specifically designed for students. You can open a BMO student account and get up to $950 in value, including $175 in cash. With BMO's current student offers, you can visit bmo.com/students for more details or use the command !BMO in chat. BMO Next Level is a first of its kind gaming program to help gamers level up in game and IRL. Run by Sean Frame, BMO's gaming relations specialist, Sean brings a commitment to helping viewers achieve their financial goals and has a passion for gaming as an active member of the gaming community. You can type BMO Next Level for more details on that. That is NXTLVL. Lastly, but again, certainly not least, One of Zero is one of the sponsors of CIE. One of Zero has applied CIE with 6 gaming mice to help you better, or to help make you better at what you do. You can type !raffle in the CIEGG's main channel, the one that you're seeing us in right now, for a chance to win one of 6 gaming mice supplied by One of Zero. You can code like a maniac, design like a guru, and game like an assassin. Take pride in your setup and look good while you achieve it all. Discover your inspiration, defy definition, be One of Zero. To learn more, you can type !One of Zero in chat. That's the number one of the number zero in chat. And just as we're wrapping up here, do you guys want to give any shout outs to really anyone in your anyone you know, anyone you want to shout out, or anything you want to shout out. Maybe it's your game, maybe it's your class, so whatever it may be. Anything you guys want to shout out? Steve, why don't we start with you here?
I mean, the only thing I would want to shout out to is just Murray and Remy, because I mean, it's one thing to have students in our class to do things that are really fun and cool, but I'm always just so amazed at the stuff that they've managed to do outside of it, right? And so I look at these two as being like great examples of what happens when people with passion can get into the field that they're interested. Yep.
Yeah, I definitely want to shout out Steve too. I think everyone who is IoT who has even a passing interest in game development should definitely try to join his and Elias's course.
Hmm.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agreed. It was like maybe the only course I really tried really hard on in undergrad because it was great. Yeah,
Who needs
and
those other courses?
well, kind of. But if you have some kind of community in your university or high school or whatever you're doing that you can join to make games, I'm going to shout that out. Go do that because that's great. You can meet people, and
Yeah.
then it won't feel so intimidating if it does feel intimidating.
All right. Well, I think that's going to be it from us today. I hope you all enjoyed. I believe on the main channel. I'm just gonna make sure I'm getting this right. Later on today, we're gonna have the CS2 finals. Yep, coming on just in about an hour here. We're gonna have the finals best of three coming on right away. So stick around for that. We'll see you all right away. I hope you all enjoyed and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.